Officer for Kane, Permanent Secretary and the other directors, as well as the Lusaka Water MD. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, following my press briefing held on Wednesday, 10th September 2025 in Kitwe, my office has received a number of queries seeking clarification on a number of issues that were discussed. My ministry, in line with government's unwavering commitment to transparency and timely dissemination of information, wishes to address the following matters in greater detail. Number one, on the time lapse between the Sino pollution incident and the engagement of an independent consultant and the subsequent takeover of the process by government. Indeed, government acknowledges and regrets the absence of a comprehensive assessment to date. However, it is important to note that the cause of the delay was unforeseeable and largely beyond the control of government and the regulators. However, it must be noted that a consultant to undertake an assessment of the pollution incident was engaged by the polluter as early as 24th March 2025, with the expectation that the assessment report will be submitted to ZIMA by 2nd May 2025. Unfortunately, this timeline was derailed owing to a contractual dispute between the parties involved, and efforts to reconcile the parties proved futile. In an effort to safeguard public interests and to avoid further delays in undertaking the assessment, government resolved to assume responsibility for the process whilst ensuring that the cost remained the obligation of the polluter. In demonstrating government's commitment to expedite the assessment process, it took proactive measures to ensure that unnecessary bureaucratic delays would not compromise public health or environmental protection. The decisive action of taking over the assessment process in the face of a contractual dispute between the parties, as well as fast-tracking the procurement process within the parameters of the public procurement guidelines, underscores government's resolve to ensure that the assessment is undertaken without any further delay. It also demonstrates government's commitment to adherence to the rule of law, whilst ensuring that those responsible for the pollution bear the full cost of the remediation and corrective action in accordance with the polluter pays principle. Therefore, what remains paramount is that corrective measures have now been instituted to ensure that the independent assessment proceeds without further delay, thereby providing reliable scientific basis for the next steps. The Attorney General has since cleared this contract, and I'm pleased to confirm that ZEMA and Applied Science Technologies Limited have now signed the contract and work will begin immediately. The Ministry of Green Economy and Environment will give regular and frequent briefings on this matter. Two, on the principle of accountability. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the law is very clear. Those responsible for causing pollution are legally obliged to bear the full cost of managing it, including prevention, control, and remediation. Only when a polluter fails to comply with directives issued by ZEMA or WAMA does government through ZEMA intervene to undertake such activities, with the cost remaining the responsibility of the polluter. In this case, government has done just that, as it has adhered to the polluter pays principle provided under the Environmental Management Act and directed Sino Metals Zambia Limited to bear the full cost of all activities related to the pollution incident of 18th February 2025 until the affected areas are satisfactorily cleaned and assessed through an environmental audit that is to be conducted by government through ZEMA. 3. Reliability of information released by government, particularly on water quality and quantity of contaminants released into the environment following the tailings dam breach. Some stakeholders have expressed concern about the reliability of information released by government thus far. Let me assure the public that all the information issued to date is based on preliminary investigations conducted and findings of competent experts from relevant government ministries departments, and agencies. Since the pollution incident, Kana Water, Zema, Wama, and an independent consultant have conducted field investigations, including water sampling across the affected areas. To ensure credibility and impartiality, the collected samples were further subjected to analysis by Alfred Knight, an internationally recognized independent laboratory. The results were further published in August 2025 by my office and the Honorable Minister of Green Economy and Environment. I must also mention that the sampling reports have also provided a clear methodology and specific sampling points which can be resorted to for purposes of verification. We have made it clear that stakeholders are at liberty to conduct independent tests from the same sample points. 4. Quantity of effluent discharged in the environment following the failure of the tailings dam. Preliminary investigations from the Ministry of Mines through the Mine Safety Department have established that the failure of tailings dam number 15F resulted in the discharge of acidic water into the Chambeshi and Mwambashi streams, as well as the Kafue River. The dam in question was designed for 6 separate impoundments, namely A, B, C, D, E, and F, divided by embankment walls. Each impoundment has a distinct size and configuration, with the tailings material deposited at the base and acidic water retained at the top. The initial assessment further indicates that incident began when impoundment F breached into impoundment E, causing E to fill and subsequently overflow into D. Impoundment D in turn overfilled and breached into A, which further overfilled and collapsed into C. The failure of impoundment C's embankment ultimately resulted in the release of acidic water and tailings into the natural water courses. Preliminary calculations by our technical experts estimate that a total of 51,800 cubic meters of material was discharged from the dam, of which 31,300 cubic meters were liquids and 17,700 cubic meters were solids. It is important to clarify that the majority of tailings solids remained within the dam, and that portion of the acidic water were retained in the impoundments of tailings dam number 15. The technical team arrived at these estimates based on the comparative measurements of the dam's reservoir levels before and after the incident. It is also significant to note that at the time of failure, impoundments A and D were largely filled with solids, creating a channel through which the discharged material from F and E passed into B and C. Impoundment F, which was approximately about 45% full at the time, contained both solids and liquids. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to emphasize that the total design capacity of tailings dam number 15F was about 2.8 million cubic meters. At the time of the incident, the dam held approximately 1 million cubic meters of both solids and liquids. Following the incident, an estimated 1 million cubic meters of tailings remained in impoundment F, which have since been transferred to other impoundments to facilitate the rehabilitation of the failed sections of tailings dam number 15. For partners referring to other quantities, for example 1.5 million cubic meters, which has been widely quoted, we have not seen and we are unable to comment competently, as we do not have the source or methodology used in the calculation. Worse still, it's not an official report. Again, as stated above, all stakeholders are kindly requested to submit any information they may have to the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment for government's use, as this may be useful to the successful resolution of this matter, more so now that the consultant has been engaged. Other reports, number 5, other reports and findings by stakeholders. Government acknowledges that stakeholders reserve the right to undertake their own independent assessments and obtain results from credible sources, but this surely must be done in a transparent and legal manner. This openness reflects government's commitment to accountability and transparency in managing this matter. However, the alternative sources at the disposal of stakeholders should also not be viewed as the only and final authority on the extent of this pollution. Further, it must therefore be understood that government's final and authoritative position on the incident will be guided by the outcome of the comprehensive assessment from the independent and impartial assessor who has been contracted. We therefore once again request our valuable partners provide any information or reports which will contribute to the successful cleanup of the environment. On the Drizzt report, that's number 6, I'm aware of the concerns and alleged contents of the assessment report by Drizzt Environmental Solutions. I wish to reiterate that under the Environmental Management Act, only reports submitted by or on behalf of the polluter can be considered by ZEMA for regulatory purposes. In this regard, the obligation to undertake an assessment and submit a report to ZEMA rested with the polluter. Further, the Environmental Restoration Order issued pursuant to Section 105 of the Environmental Management Act specifically directed the polluter to undertake the assessment. Therefore, Drizzt Environmental Solutions, as a contracted party to the polluter, would not assume the rights and responsibility of the polluter under the Act. Considering that the Drizzt report was not submitted by or on behalf of the polluter, government could not formally consider the report. It was on this basis that government's initial efforts were to reconcile the parties in order to move forward and consider the report without further delay. When this proved unsuccessful, government commenced the process of engaging an independent consultant, which engagement has been completed. Another question which comes frequently is on the scope of works of the proposed new consultant. The scope of works for the proposed new consultant is comprehensive and covers areas including 1, biophysical assessment covering the land, water, resources, air, flora, fauna, and ecosystems before, during, and after the pollution. The socio-economic assessment covering the impact on communities and their livelihood, health, and infrastructure and culture. Impacts on biodiversity and ecosystem functioning, including the secondary effects of pollution, such as bioaccumulation and habitat fragmentation. 4, assessment of the direct, indirect, cumulative, and residual impacts. And 5, identifying mitigation, remediation, and restoration actions. This comprehensive assessment will provide detailed information to guide the cleanup process for informed decision making. To our partners, we call upon you to partner with us as we deal with this matter. 8, on whether cleanup should have, the ongoing cleanup, physical cleanup, should have weighted the assessment report. It would not have been logical, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to allow pollution to remain unattended, risking secondary contamination and further causing harm to communities. The current cleanup exercise currently going on by Sino methods addresses physical pollution, which does not require comprehensive assessment to confirm. For example, during my recent visit to the Copper Belt, I personally observed visible tailings near Kalusare compound in Chambishi that have since been reclaimed. Government's priority is the protection of public health and the environment, and this is the reason why it invoked Section 107 of the Environmental Management Act to deal with this matter, thus demonstrating leadership and decisiveness in dealing with this matter. 9, call for open, frank, and constructive dialogue leading up to the successful cleanup of the environment. Once again, the government of the Republic of Zambia calls for calm from our people as we tackle this difficult situation. We call for the usual support from our partners, the diplomatic community, the private sector experts, the press, civil society, and academia for advice, guidance, and alternative solutions to this matter. We are alive to the fact that not all knowledge and wisdom lies with government, as we have stated many times before, but that we need the collaboration and support from everyone to manage this complicated task. Therefore, kindly engage us in a frank and open manner as it is only through critical feedback and honest dialogue that will succeed in successfully cleaning up our environment. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, be assured that government remains unwavering in its commitment to safeguarding the environment and protecting the health and well-being of the Zambian people. Thank you for your attention on this matter, and as we move forward, we hope and trust that we've answered all the queries. We now want to concentrate on the next stage, which is the comprehensive assessment of the situation and the subsequent cleanup of the river systems, as this government strives to ensure that it protects the environment and it gives clean, quality water to its people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. So at this point in time, I did mention earlier that there are two issues that the Honorable Ministers would be attending to, because we know obviously issues of water, issues of environment affects everybody. At this point in time, maybe I would invite one or two questions from the press on the message that has been delivered, and then we can move on to the next message, which is erratic water supply vis-a-vis impacts of climate change that it has had on the community.
Okay, so maybe quickly, Honorable Minister and the distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we also wanted to brief you quickly on the water situation on the Copper Belt as well as in some parts of Lusaka. So the Ministry of Water Development and Sanitation is fully aware of the serious water supply challenges being experienced by residents in various parts of the country, including Lusaka, Chingola, Chililawombwe, Mufulira, and Ndola. Government assures the public that addressing these challenges is a top national priority and decisive measures are underway to deliver lasting solutions. We've been told about challenges in Mutendere East, Kalikiliki, Baulen, and Kabanana. Government empathizes with households in Mutendere East, Kalikiliki, Baulen, and Kabanana, and nearby communities that have endured erratic water supply. To provide immediate relief, Lusaka Water Supply and Sanitation Company has deployed water bowsers and completed an interconnection between Kalikiliki and Mutendere East to stabilize water supply. A key challenge, however, has been limited pumping hours due to power shortages. Government has since directed ZESCO to urgently process and connect Lusaka Water and Sewerage to a dedicated power line, which will extend pumping hours and ensure water availability during the day. Additionally, we have since supported Lusaka Water and we have directed them to quickly replace the leaking 300 cubic meter ground reservoir in Kalikiliki, as well as implement equitable water rationing measures until the situation is fully normalized. As regarding the Chingola, Chililawombwe, Mufulira, and Ndola, the Ministry again acknowledges the ongoing challenges in areas served by Mlonga Water Supply Company as well as Kana Water and Supply Company. These difficulties stem from obsolete infrastructure, historical underinvestment, and increased demand from the rapid growing population. With support from cooperating partners, government is implementing the Zambia Water and Sanitation Project alongside several emergency works. For example, in Chingola, residents are supplied through two systems directly from the Kafue River and mine water. Disruptions in mine water supply have worsened shortages, but expansion and rehabilitation works at the Kafue River treatment plant alongside interconnection works will soon reduce dependence on mining water. Government has therefore released over 6 million kwacha for for the Chiwempala Water Supply Restoration Project, covering an 8-kilometer distribution network to benefit over 15,000 residents by the end of this year. New bulk water supply lines have also been commissioned in Riverside Extension, Chingola Central, Watasha, Chingola South, and Chiwempala. Major pipelines are also under construction in Changa South and the town center. The long-standing shortages in Lulamba will be addressed once the new recirculation network is completed again before the end of this year. In Chirabombwe, population growth in new settlements such as Kamenza East, Congo Road, Kakoso South, Nakatindi and Kawama has placed additional pressure on existing systems. In response, we've directed Mlonga Water to construct a new reservoir at Hilltop to rehabilitate the intake and the Chirabombwe water treatment plant, as well as upgrading the bulk water supply lines to Kamenza, Kakoso, Mine Township, and Town Center. Projects in Nakatindi, James Piri Ward, and Konkora Township are also underway, while the Kakoso South and Old Plot project, which will benefit over 600 households, is on course. To further improve supply, the replacement of the 5.5 kilometer DN500 pipeline from Kapue intake to Chirabombwe water treatment plant at a total cost of about 87 million kwacha has been approved and will be funded by government. In Mufulira, shortages have affected Kankoyo, Mupambe, Kamuchanga, Kalukanya, Francis Mukuka, Fairview, Eastleigh, and High Coast areas. And to address this critical water shortage, rehabilitation of the Kafue and Chiworia water treatment plants and network is ongoing. The Mopani copper mines plant and river intakes are also being restored, including a 2.1 kilometer pipeline project in Kankoyo, which is actually nearing completion. Government again has since approved a budget of about 110 million kwacha to fully realize these interventions, including construction of the 8.5 kilometer DN40 pipeline from the Kafue treatment plant to Kamuchanga. To meet rising demand in low-income areas, standalone systems have been established in Mokambo, Kawama East, Murundu, Zimba, and Kansunswa. Additionally, 3 standby diesel generators have been installed to power booster stations in Kasompe, that's in Chingola, Fairview, and Kamchanga and Mufulira to mitigate load shedding. Government indeed acknowledges that interruptions are linked to ongoing rehabilitation works which require temporary shutdowns of treatment plants. In Ndola, the ministry is also pleased to announce that Kafu Water and Sanitation Company has connected hundreds of households in Ndola district to clean and provide safe water to the tune of about 4 million kwacha under the Constituency Development Fund. So various interventions there have been done. Government therefore urges other constituencies to replicate such initiatives and calls on residents to safeguard infrastructure and obviously pay their bills. We believe that these combined interventions in Lusaka and the Copper Belt and other areas across the country reflects government's firm commitment to achieving equitable access to safe and reliable water and sanitation countrywide. So guided by the pronouncements of President Hakainde Chilema on the importance of water and energy security, the ministry reaffirms that we will continue mobilizing resources to upgrading infrastructure and expanding the distribution networks to deliver lasting water solutions to all Zambians. Honorable Minister and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of my long briefing to yourselves, but we thought it was very, very important that we provide details because there are a lot of questions coming to the ministry. Honorable Minister, thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Collins and Nzovu, for the 2 messages delivered. Very important indeed and timely. I think the takeaways, obviously, it's issues of transparency, information dissemination, environmental cleanup, water quality, and infrastructure expansion. So he has touched on a number of issues. At this point in time, I'm going to call upon members of the press, introduce yourself and ask a question. So we'll just take 3 questions from the first message. The questions can be posed to either the Honorable Minister Collins Nzovu or Honorable Minister Cornelius Mwetwa. Over to you. You introduce yourself and ask the question. So we'll stick to the 2 messages that have been delivered. Those are the questions that will be expected in response. Over to you.
It's very clear.
It's very clear?
Go to the next.
Okay. Okay. So now we'll hand over to Honorable Cornelius Mwetwa.
So Honorable Mwetwa has also guided that our statements were comprehensive. And this was a very, very important message. I think he will be engaging the press, as is the owner of the press anyway, for other issues at the later stage. So we thank you sincerely for coming. Thank you all the viewers, including those joining us on other media platforms, including social media. Thank you very much.